In today's video, we're going to be talking about the 10 mistakes I made running over 200 webinars and generating over $30 million in revenue for our clients. If you don't already know who I am, my name is Marc-Anthony, and my company partners with educational businesses in order to build webinars in their business, which allows them to scale their impact and scale their revenue. If you get value out of today's video, go ahead and send this over to a friend who's running webinars or who's thinking about running webinars and save the mistakes that I made in your business. Let's get into the very first mistake. The very first mistake that we made running over 200 webinars and generating over $30 million was building the webinar first and not the offer first. So every business owner understands that the offer is king. And with webinars, I believe it's even more crucial to have a perfect offer because you're selling live. And we used to create the webinar first, the pitch, the positioning, the funnel, emails, SMS, and then we'd create the offer last. But what we realized is that nothing matters unless you're selling a Lamborghini for $1 at the very end of your webinar. You can have the crappiest webinar in the world. I've seen them. But with the best offer at the very end, you'll still make way more money. And a great example of this right now during 2026 at this present time is tons of coaches are using CPA deals, affiliate softwares, in order to sell their programs. Because a lot of people who are not our clients, frankly, they're having a hard time selling their high ticket products and services because a lot of people are now more skeptical than ever. So what they're doing is giving away their programs for free in exchange for the customer buying some sort of affiliate software, and they get paid a CPA deal. Now, do I necessarily love this business model? And I don't really encourage our clients to do it at all. However, I do know a Lamborghini for $1 when I see one. And it is a phenomenal offer, which is why a lot of these businesses are making a ton of money. So remember that the webinar doesn't matter as much as the offer that you're selling at the very end. So in order to construct a good offer, you want to ask yourself a couple of questions. Number one, does this move a majority of obstacles in my client's path in order for them to get the desired result? Number two, is the time and effort required from them greater than the result that I'm promising to deliver? And then number three, is the value that they're getting at least 10x the price? If the price is 10% of the value, then people are willing to throw their money at you. All right, so that was mistake number one. Now, mistake number two, as crazy as it may sound, is running less webinars. What we found is that you make more money the more webinars you run. And it sounds even like crazy just saying this out loud because of how long it took us to really understand this. But one webinar is better than two. So when we were able to run more webinars, we ended up making a lot more money. And this started with one of our clients earlier this year, where we were spending money and spending money and spending money around like 6 figures or so a week. And we saw a point of diminishing returns with the sales team because our sales team was only booked out a small percentage of the week. If the webinar was on Wednesday, they were fully booked out Thursday, Friday, and some of Saturday. We had empty calendars pretty much leading up into the week. So instead, what we realized is if we just run a second webinar to fill up the first half of the week's calendar, we'll make way more money throughout the month. And thus we did. And that offer hit high $600,000 months, almost a $700,000 month because of this strategy. When in doubt, run more webinars, you'll make way more money. Now, mistake number three was optimizing for leads or optimizing for a low quality conversion event in the funnel. When most business owners come and speak to me about their webinars, a couple of issues may arise. And one of the most common ones is the fact that they're getting brokies through their funnel. And every single time they tell me that, I always ask them, tell me what conversion event you're optimizing for. And they'll pull up their ads manager, and majority of the time it's leads. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with optimizing for leads if your messaging on the front end is really dialed in, which means all your ads really speaking to the ideal lead that you want. However, most people aren't great with their messaging on the front end. And because of that, they attract a lower quality audience. Many business owners, they may flex that they get like a $4 cost per lead on their webinar, but everyone is broke. Versus I have webinars right now where I'm getting a $70 cost per lead and have an 8x ROAS. You don't care about how many leads you get. You care about if you get the right kind of leads who are going to buy your product and service. So instead of optimizing for leads, what you want to do is optimize for events further down in the funnel, such as sales, such as qualified booked calls, okay? Make sure to optimize for that for your next webinar and watch your lead quality increase. Now, the fourth mistake we made on our webinars was not breaking the fourth wall. Now, for those of you who don't understand that analogy, the fourth wall is a term that actors use essentially, which when you break the fourth wall, that now separates the audience from the actor. So now the audience now understands everything that the actors are now like experiencing within the film, okay? It's like during The Wizard of Oz where you peeled back the curtain and saw the guy instructing like the entire thing essentially, right? What you want to make sure that you do on your webinars is break the fourth wall and increase trust rapidly, okay? So what we used to do on our webinars for some of our clients was we used to gatekeep the fact that we were going to sell them something on the webinar. And the thought process was that if they believe you're going to sell them something, then they were essentially not going to buy on the webinar. Many people use these bait and switch tactics and they worked for a bit. But now, because of trust being at an all-time low, radical transparency wins. So on your webinar, if you can be as transparent as possible about everything, to the point where it feels uncomfortable, being transparent about how much you charge, being transparent about your intentions on the webinar, being transparent about how much money that you make from your coaching program, being transparent about your student results, literally being transparent about everything you possibly can increase the results on your webinar dramatically. All right. So make sure to break the fourth wall. That was mistake number 4. Now, mistake number 5 is treating every lead the same. Now, when you're scaling up a webinar and spending multiple 6 figures a month in spend, you'll start to realize you have a giant pool of leads, a huge team, and you have no idea which leads your team needs to tackle first. What we started to realize was that not every lead is created the same. Someone who opts in for the webinar is not the same lead as someone who shows up, which is not the same lead as someone who fills out an application, which is not the same lead as someone who may buy your VIP or bridge upsell offer. So it's super important that you segment out these leads based off of highest intent to lowest intent and have your sales team work highest intent to lowest intent. Really, you want to neglect the lowest intent leads as much as possible from a sales perspective and have marketing re-engage them and have only sales tackle the highest intent leads, because that will allow your business to be a lot more efficient and squeeze the lemon of leads that you essentially have to make more money and have a higher return on ad spend. Now, mistake number 6, and this mistake has literally, I kid you not, lost us 7 figures. So pay attention. And it's a boring mistake that a lot of people are going to frankly skip over. And that's ignoring the tech stack. Anyone who spent 6 figures a month on webinars understands that tech makes or breaks the entire funnel. The entire webinar funnel is literally just one big marketing tech stack. And if a Zap misfires, if SMS forgets to send, if your email deliverability tanks, your webinar will go to waste. I want you to think of your webinar as the Super Bowl. You get one shot at winning the championship. Luckily, you get to have 4 Super Bowls a month. But however, it's not a VSL funnel where you get daily at-bats every single day. You only get one shot. So imagine if everything messes up and now you're down a webinar for the entire month and you have to look at the other 3 webinars in order to make up for it. You want to consolidate your tech stack as much as possible. Less margin for errors needs to happen with your tech stack, which means use softwares that integrate with each other. Therefore, you don't have to pass information from one software to another using Zapier. Now, number 6 is spending past capacity. So I want you to remember this equation. Closer availability times cost per book call equals ad spend per webinar. We figured out this equation early on as we were trying to scale spend with scaling the amount of closers that we have on the team. Some weeks we would scale spend too aggressively and not have enough closer capacity in order to take the calls, which inflated our overall cost per book call. So what you want to make sure that you do is, as much as you increase spend, you need to increase closer capacity with it, especially if you're booking within a 2-day window on your webinar and not a 3-day window to maximize show-up rates. Spend equals closer capacity times cost per book call. That equation right there will save you a ton of money on your webinars and allow you to scale a lot more profitably. So mistake number 7 was fixing what worked. There's this old saying that you've probably heard, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's even more true for webinars. If something is working in your business, the biggest mistake you can make is trying to fix it, okay? Alex Hormozi has this saying that I absolutely love, and I tell my team this all the time, is some fires will just burn. There are some things that will just be screwed up, but you need to identify the fires that are about to kill your kid, okay? Attack that fire first. The fire that's burning your family photos, it may not be the best fire to tackle at this point in time, okay? So anything that's working, we don't touch it anymore. Once a metric gets within the KPI that I like it to be, Then I start looking at other metrics in order to attack, okay? This is a simple bottleneck analysis framework that I talk about all the time. I may make a YouTube video about this, but that's essentially what I look at when I'm trying to find what fires to fight first. If something is working on your webinar, the worst thing you can do is try to fix it. Leave it alone, increase spend, get more closers, and tackle other things that are actually broken in the business. Now, mistake number 8 was not scaling creatives with scaling spend. Now, a lot of you here watching this, given that you're a savvy business owner, has definitely heard of the Andromeda update. It's an update that Facebook recently released that has a ton of advertisers confused on exactly how to media buy and how to make ads. Essentially, you need a lot more creatives now, but not just more creatives, diverse messaging across different creatives. And this year, while scaling up our webinars, we realized we need even more diversity the more amount of money we spend. So our CMO Bryant came out with a simple equation, which is really every $10,000 to $20,000 in ad spend, we need about 25 to 30 creatives, give or take. So you do the math based off how much money you're spending and how much creatives that you'll need every single month. And we weren't scaling creatives as we scaled spend. This inflated our overall cost and we played catch up essentially. So now we have SOPs in place to allow us to scale creatives as well as scaling spend. And that's a mistake I don't want you to make in your business. So make sure as you scale your webinars that you're scaling creatives with it, but scaling diverse messaging, not just throwing random creatives in front of Facebook. Because Facebook only recognizes diverse messaging as brand new creatives. If you make one body and slap 10 hooks on it, Facebook isn't going to recognize that as a new creative, which means it's not going to get any spend. Mistake number 9 has been my favorite mistake that I learned all year. And it's been the mistake that has changed the trajectory of myself as a business owner. And that's the mistake of copying best practices. If you're a business owner like me, you've definitely heard the saying, don't reinvent the wheel. And while that may be true, if you're trying to build a large business, you need to understand a concept that Elon Musk talks about, which is called first principles thinking. Now, first principles thinking is a concept that changed my business forever. So essentially, the brain takes very little effort to look at someone else and reason by analogy, meaning that because X person is doing X thing, therefore, if I do X thing, I will get a similar, if not better, result. And while that's true, this prevents business owners from getting incredibly creative and scaling their business because they're always one step ahead, having to rely on what others are doing to scale their business. So instead, what I learned was to think from first principles, which just means strip away every single component of a problem and only address its core truths. So an example that Elon Musk gave was that he was trying to figure out how to make a least expensive battery. And all of his engineers told him that this specific type of battery was super expensive. And if he didn't think by first principles and just reasoned by analogy, he would say that X company spends this for a battery, therefore I have to spend this for a battery. So what Elon did was ask his scientists and engineers a couple of questions, such as, where are these batteries made? What are the materials in the battery? How much are those materials made for? And when he walked back everything to its most basic truths, he actually found out that a battery is not that expensive to make. And that's exactly what we did in our business this year. We stopped looking at what everyone else is doing, reasoning by analogy, and instead, we thought from first principles in order to fix complex problems, to scale our clients' businesses and generate over $30 million of revenue. Now, I've saved the best mistake for last, and it's a mistake that many business owners who are thinking about running webinars run into. And that's the mistake of trying to fit every structure of a webinar in a box. What does that mean? You've probably looked up before you try to run a webinar, the perfect webinar formula or a webinar structure. And you may have came across a couple of videos, either by me, by other people who teach webinars on the internet. But the issue with that we found is that a structure doesn't fit the person. Most people think that they're not great on camera, therefore they can't present on a webinar. And that's because they followed a structure from someone who is good on camera. Someone like Russell Brunson, Tony Robbins, Shelby Sapp. They're taking their webinars and conforming it to their personality. So what our company did was create a framework that works for every single presenter. Doesn't matter if you think you're traditionally good on camera or not. And that's when we created the 3 presenter types. So there's 3 different presenter types that you can fall into in your webinar. Presenter type 1 is a preacher, type 2 is a demonstrator, and type 3 is a tactician. Now, depending on your presenter type, is depending on how you want to reverse engineer the webinar to fit you. A preacher is what's commonly known as the people who are great on camera. Think the Tony Robbins, the Dean Graziosi's, the Shelby Sapps of the world. Amazing on camera. And because they're great on camera, and because they're great speakers and great motivators and great preachers, they lean heavily into that on their webinar, which is one of their skills. Next, we have a demonstrator who's able to demonstrate their expertise live. Now, most of our training clients actually fall into this space. I find that people who are real educators love just sharing their screen and breaking down their model live. Now, a great webinar to watch for this, by the way, is Pace Morby. Now, the third type of presenter is a tactician. This is someone who thinks in mental models and frameworks. Now, I want you to think of Alex Hormozi and Russell Brunson. And even I fall into this category. These are business owners who think in mental models and frameworks, meaning on their webinars, they heavily lean into their specific methodologies and their way of doing things. When you identify your specific presenter type and mold the webinar around that presenter type, that's when you get outsized returns on your webinar and you don't just follow a structure because someone else said it on the internet. So those are 10 mistakes we made after running over 200 webinars and generating $30 million. And if you want a full breakdown on exactly how you can generate 7 figures and even 8 figures from your webinar, go ahead and watch this video right here.